Didn't nobody want to see you when you was young. Wasn't nobody tripping off you then. So why do we think anybody is deserving, right? Or why do I think as a little boy that you're deserving of someone who would take your heart and really protect it and create a safe space? So it's easier for you to have transactional sex or have things that are convenient for you because that gives you control. And control is just insecurity. Insecurity is just fear. And that's that little boy in you who is so afraid that if I can't touch and go with everything, I might end up touch and staying and might get stuck in a place that I don't know how to navigate. Let me say this again, not in a place that is.
Hey guys, welcome to Little Blackbird 91. Listen, we're doing a part 2 of this, and I think this is really a powerful conversation, as I said, so I wanted to break it down some more. Transactional sex is a real thing that happens in relationships for a lot of people who are afraid of actually emotionally connecting with somebody. If you've heard my story, I've told you many a times, I was in Egypt. And as I was in Egypt, I too was on these streets, okay? All right? And it's far more easier connecting with people physically and having sex with them than it was actually building an emotional connection with others. Now, the whole point of what we're trying to break down is help you understand some of the reasons why this actually happens. Shannon Sharpe is somebody who's a successful football player who is now a successful podcaster who's having these great conversations, and he's having another one with Cheyenne Bryant, who's pretty much actually giving him a therapy session, right, and an interview, which is cool. And they're diving into this topic of transactional sex, transactional relationship, where the relationship is based upon sex rather than actual emotional attachment. The difficulty with this issue is really understanding the crux and the reasoning why this actually happens. Why do you find it easier to have sex with people than it is to actually stay in a committed relationship or build a strong emotional connection with somebody, right? And the difficulty is that the way that you view connection is not safe. This is the whole point. The way that you view a connection with somebody emotionally does not feel safe. You do not feel in control, and you do not feel that you have enough of a say and enough of a power in that relationship to be able to defend yourself, assert yourself, say what you want, say what you need, be able to advocate for yourself. And so actually sex becomes easier because the expectations are vastly different. I spoke about this before about how when people are unpredictable, for those who are avoidants, it can be very difficult because what avoidants want is consistency. Even though they're inconsistent themselves, they want consistency because when that consistency comes, they can trust it. So if you don't know anything about attachment styles, I have to break it down really quickly for you guys. Attachment styles is a theory that was born from observation test by John Bowlby, who's a British psychologist. And what he noticed is that young kids, the way they would interact with their caregivers was also the way that they would form emotional attachments in adult relationships, right? The way they form bonds with people. And so what he discovered was there were 3 categories: secure, avoidant, and anxious people. So let me talk about the avoidant and the anxious people. These are what we call insecure attachment traits, right? So the avoidants grow up in households where they have been avoided, in a sense. They've been dismissed. Their emotional needs have not been met. They've been neglected. They've been left to their own devices. They've had to grow up really, really quickly and become hyper independent because their emotional needs were not seen. Okay, all right. You probably grew up in a household where you're a third parent or second parent. You have to be raised in a particular way where your emotional needs are not considered. Then you've got the anxious people who grew up in a household where the parents are actually inconsistent with the caregiving, right? So they love you based on performance and conditions. Okay, so you're loved because you do X, Y, and Z. You're loved because you got good grades. You're loved because you are, the person who cleans the house. You're loved because you cook. You're loved because you do X, Y, and Z. And you've recognized that your love comes from performance. So the way that you love people is to perform to achieve their love or to receive their love. So you've got avoidants who are afraid of rejection, and you've got anxious people who are afraid of abandonment. These are 2 categories. There's a third category which is called fearful avoidance. They are people that grew up in households of chaos. Okay, so if your household was chaos, where either you saw your mom or your dad always domestically fighting and arguing, or your dad or your mom was a very angry parent and you never knew what parent you would get today. Maybe they were addicted to drugs, or they were addicted to drink. So every day was unpredictable. You just never could know what was going to happen, right? And this creates what we call a fearful avoidance, because the child never has a sense of safety. They are always constantly being hypervigilant because they have to pay attention to everything that's going on. Again, These are all categories. And we know that from part 1 that we did, that Shannon Sharpe talked about growing up in a household where he had been grown up by his grandma, but his father had been an alcoholic. So his father wasn't in his life in that aspect, and his father passed away when he was very young. His granddad also passed when he was very, very young. So he was raised by his grandma, right? So a lot of turmoil is happening in Shannon Sharpe's upbringing. So, and then we get him being raised by his bigger brother, and then him going to football, right? And him going into playing football, and that being a place where he feels free enough to exhibit his creativity and his skills and showmanship, right? And he becomes successful, one of the most successful footballers alive. And this is important because now he's built this life. How does that impact his relationships? Well, the reality is that whilst he developed his skills on the field, the relational aspect wasn't built because he never experienced it. Simply put, right? He never experienced it. And so the fear that creeps in is that, who can love me? Am I good enough to be loved? Am I good enough to be cared about? Am I good enough to be appreciated? Because again, when you look at the fact that your father figure can't get it together enough to cancel his drinking to come and show you love, or at least he passes away before that happens, this is going to create a mindset within that person. Right. So we have to put ourselves in that particular shoe and that thought process. If you've grown up in a household where your parents couldn't show you love, or you had 2 parents and they weren't as attentive as you needed, your emotional needs weren't taken care of, they never turned up to your football games or your award shows or your plays or your school, whatever, they weren't showing up for you, they weren't emotionally present. Or maybe you grew up in a household where parents were only loving you because you're performing. Either way, it's going to create some need and a wound within you. This is what creates the idea behind this sexual aspect. So for Shannon Sharpe, sex is easier than it is to be in love, because to be in love also means to give away your heart and to trust that other person. But you have to understand a thing about attachment styles, which is when you're either anxious, dismissive avoidant, or fearful avoidant, there is a distrust somewhere. For anxious people, the distrust is that they believe they have too much regard for other people. They trust people way more than they trust themselves. Then you've got dismissive avoidant people who trust themselves far more than they trust other people. And then you've got fearful avoidance who don't trust themselves and don't trust other people. And so now this is all about trust. So in the regard when it comes to sex, sex is easier. I can trust sex because I know what I get from sex. There's a really easy equation that comes from sex. And in fact, with sex, there is an immediate gratitude of an action. The equation's simple. I do good sex, I get a good gratifying response from the person. So what you'll find is people, especially in those attachment styles, will actually perform in sex in order to mask the need to emotionally connect, number 1. But 2, they'll perform really well in sex in order to get plaudits and gratitude. They'll do a lot. They'll do a lot in the sexual aspect. They'll do a lot in the sexual aspect in terms of performing as well. So they won't feel rejected, they won't feel abandoned, and they won't feel betrayed. Right? But all it is a mask for the truth of wanting to emotionally connect. But we'll get a little bit deeper into that. I hope I've explained some things to give you a bit of a basis and understanding of where we're at right now. And then we're going to go a little bit deeper. Let's go.
Isn't safe, not in a place that isn't loving, but in a place that the little boy in you does not know how to navigate. It's time for the grown man in you to grow the fuck up and give yourself a chance to love, whatever that looks like, and to gain a sense of self of who you really are at your heart space. Because transactional life isn't really legacy. It just isn't. It's nice on paper,
yeah,
but it's not legacy. The real wealth and the real legacy is what Dion has. And that's family. That's family. I'm not saying you don't have it with your girls, and I'm not saying it's too late to create it.
right.
But what I'm saying is I would like to offer that at some point, you do start to say, let me just dive into my heart by myself. Even if you're still doing your transactional stuff with women or whatever, I'm not saying stop, you grown, but start to just get a sense of self of like who you are at the heart space, because that's.
So she's absolutely right about legacy. As somebody who's obviously gone into that particular space of just fornicating like there's no tomorrow, I ain't gonna lie to you. I know exactly what they mean by the legacy aspect. It gets to a certain point where you are just shooting up the clubs, and when I say shooting up the clubs, well, I probably shouldn't use that word, but when you're moving mad, Yeah. And you're getting reckless and you're getting stupid. Now, I don't have no kids out there, thank God. But you can get to a place where you start to be reckless, and all you're thinking about is the immediate moment. You're not thinking long term. And this is why the Bible says that sin will take you deeper into sin. It will take you to sin where it will take you to a place of destruction. Where Shannon is, right? The constant sex aspect, he got exposed with that young girl that he had sex with, right? That's usually the warning that God has given you, that stop this behavior. Okay, all right. You're going too deep with this sin now, and my grace is sufficient, but it's getting to a point where I gotta pull you up because you're gonna go too deep. The reality is also psychologically is that the need to keep on having sex, right, without really emotionally attaching to anybody, is to allow yourself the ability to have control over your life. And because you never had control in your childhood, you now look for control in other ways. The control is to create distance between yourself and the other person. Okay, all right. The distance between yourself and the other person, you create it emotionally, right? And so what you do is, right, that sex now becomes the barometer of your connections with people. And you enjoy it, you're gratified by it, but you're always empty and unfulfilled at the end of it. Not necessarily in the immediate moments. After, if you've done this, if you've been sexing for a long time, some of you know who you're talking to, you know who you are. You've been sexing different people for a very long time. It gets to a certain point, you just feel empty, bro. Like it no longer suffices, because really and truly, after a certain point, you start to realize you're actually searching for something. And a lot of people don't recognize they're searching for something within the sex. They're hoping that they can feel something that will make them go, okay, makes sense. But you almost find that you never really find that thing because you're always only giving a piece of yourself. We said this in part 1. Sex is great, but when it's the only thing you're offering, it's only a piece of yourself. It's not a true identity. It's not a true aspect of a totality of who you are. And so when you're used to giving a piece of yourself and not the whole of yourself, you will find yourself feeling very much empty. Right? So then sex with love, what it requires you to be in love, to really be in love, is to show up. And also to be open and to be revealed. It's to be exposed. It is to say that I'm going to trust somebody else with the most precious thing that I have, that's tangible but not tangible. And that's my heart. My heart is the most tangible yet intangible thing. You can literally break it, but you can't see it being broken. And so actually, when I hand that to you, I'm really saying that I trust you with this thing. It's the most precious thing I can give you. Right? Whereas sex is simply my body. My body I can give to you at any point in time. It don't hurt when I give my body. You know what I'm saying to you? So this aspect of sex being more safer than love, it makes sense. Doesn't mean it's right, but it makes sense why he would do so if you have that idea about yourself.
Our heart is who we are. Our mind is something that we have to have dominion over to control. But our heart is something we can't control because it's the authenticity of who we really are.
Well, since you put it like since that, what is it about good girls and bad guys?
What is it about good girls who like bad guys?
Yes.
You mean like the women who've been liking you?
I guess you could say that, Doc. Touche.
Trying to get crafty. I think that those women, again, are women who are overcompensating for that kind of fatherly bad guy who can come in and create a leadership that they believe leadership is.
Mm-hmm.
Usually those women are fatherless little girls who don't have a clue on what healthy leadership looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So they look at the bad guy who can puff his chest out and who can call shots or who can have some control over her as, this is leadership because he's giving me some type of guidance,
right.
Some type of direction.
Yes.
A woman who has had a father knows.
Now, before she goes into this, because it's really important what she's about to go into, and we need to talk about Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, because she does this every single time, and I tell you that she does this. What he asks this question is really important, right? Because he asks this question with a subtleness, because he's almost saying like the good girls, they seem to like me, the bad guy. What he doesn't recognize is you like the good girls. You like the good girls because they carry something that you wish you think that you wish you had. What is that? Good girls tend to carry a sense of innocence and a sense of purity. And because you've gone through such hardships, turmoil, storms, and breakages, you don't look at yourself as being this innocent, this pure individual anymore. You see yourself as being tainted, broken, hurt. You see this damage. And so when you look at that young girl, okay, all right, that good girl, all right, is you start seeing a part of yourself. I always say this, but people date based on mirrors, right? So there's one thing is, number one, they have something that you want, or number two, they are just like you. Okay, so when we are dating people, like you were saying, bad guys dating a good guy, the bad girl, no, good girls dating a bad guy, there's an aspect of seeing a person and going, I wish I had some of that innocence. That innocence, that goodness will rub off on me. Maybe I'll be good a little bit. When you around me, I can be good. I can change my ways. I can be different when you're around me. But all that tends to happen is the bad tends to corrupt the good. I ain't gonna lie to you. In most cases, the good don't win, right? Because it's easier to pull someone down than it is to pull them up. So what ends up happening is after a while, the good becomes tainted. The good becomes damaged. The good becomes hurt. And now that hurt, that damage, that aspect then ends up becoming something that you look at and you now begin to hate and be resentful against, because now you're looking at your mirror again. And the mirror is now facing you, no longer good, no longer innocent, no longer pure. It's now very much representing what you have inputted into it. Now, he or anybody else may not be trying to do that. They're not trying to necessarily corrupt people. There are some people who are, they're narcissists, but they're not trying to corrupt people. They're not trying to break people. But because you have patterns of behavior, habits that tend to be things that will hurt people because you don't know how to emotionally connect, eventually you will be facing the mirror. This is what you birthed, right? So with this aspect, okay, all right, with this aspect of good girls go good with bad guys, we have to make a clear delineation. They're not good girls. Most times they're naive or they're just nice. And the difference between that is, like I always say, good people have learned boundaries. Good people are also aware that bad people in the world actually exist. Good people also are able to have their needs and their wants and know how to assertively get them. We associate good with nice way too much. They're nice girls, okay? At the end of the day, they're nice girls. They are girls who are naive, and that's a difference, because what ends up happening is, if you're good, you start to recognize that as I'm good, I can't put myself in every scenario and situation, even if it looks like you may benefit from me, because in the end, I recognize that your inability to want to be loved is going to be a problem. The Bible says, do not, it's easier for a man to be on the top of a roof than be with a quarrelsome woman. Then it talks about it's easier for a husband to be so talk about the unloved woman. It's about in Proverbs, talking about an unloved woman. Okay, all right. The unloved woman, about how it's easier to be on a roof or a leak for set. I can't remember. But basically what it's letting us know is that an unloved woman can be very difficult to love. I mean, she's been unloved before, right? It's the same thing with an unloved man. It's very difficult to love them because what their existences and their ideas are, they are based heavily on power and control. A lot of times they're in relationships. A lot of times they're in relationships of they are in relationships when it comes to they're in relationships of power struggles. Okay, all right, they're in power struggles a lot of times. And that's really important, because what you start to realize is that if you're always in a power struggle, it's because you don't trust. It's because you don't trust. And you're always trying to get an angle where if you have the power in the relationship, then you can feel safe. But that long term inevitably makes the relationship itself be unsafe. Jay's so annoying. Another round is so silly. You know what I mean? So yeah.
How to decipher from a controlling man who's the bad guy and a man who knows how to lead her. And what happens is, it's not that the woman with the father doesn't want a man who can run shit, because I like a man who will run shit.
For sure.
Who will tell me exactly where to go, how to go. And I'm even okay with saying how high when he say jump, when the leadership is right.
Right.
I'm quick to submit.
Okay.
Okay, daddy, no problem. But a man who is a bad guy with ill intent, because if you don't have good intent, you have ill intent. There is no lukewarm.
Okay.
That's it. So you're either deceiving me or you're allowing me a safe space where I can trust you. There's no in between. So the bad guy is in deception. And only a woman who wants to be led by a deceiver is a woman who is lost in herself. But a woman who is not lost in herself and has a sense of self and a sense of what a male healthy leader looks like my father led me,
Right.
not to a ditch, but led me even when he had to crucify himself to lead me.
Right.
Now, I'm going to say on two things. First and foremost, I'm going to talk about Dr. Cheyenne Bryant in a second or two. Because remember I told you about how she does things, that she'll always tell you about how good her father was. And I'm like, sis, this is why you ran away from 4 marriages. Because you're not telling the truth. I think Dr. Cheyenne Bryant is great at her job. Great at her job. Now, she's really good, but she's delusional. I'm just going to call it what it is. And I don't know if she's doing it on purpose or whether it's just for the thing, but she's delusional. And I keep saying she's delusional because she keeps talking about how great her dad was, but your dad was a drug lord. How great could he be? I'm not trying to shoot anybody. I want you to understand something. It's going to affect you, right? When you see your dad, okay, be a drug lord. If you know your dad runs the streets, you're never going to be physically safe. So you can't tell me how amazing he actually is. That's the whole point of why I'm saying that. When she says, and that's why I keep saying to you, pay attention. Every video she does, she tells you how great her dad is. Have you noticed? And that's when I said she's in delusion, because she's not being honest. And the very thing she's talking about is what she's doing. She's in deceiving. And I don't think she's done it on purpose. She's deceived. That's, you know what I mean? And maybe it's because she likes women. I don't know. Who knows? But I don't really care about that. What I care about is the information distilling right now. Right? Is that particular aspect. She's amazing at her job. I want you to understand this. No, she's amazing at her job. She speaks to mandem, okay, all right, and she gets them. You know what I'm saying to you? All right, but she's in delusion. Right? She's in delusion. And that's why the information about her running away from these marriages or, you know, having relationships where she lacks control. She lacks power and control. You see, when I talk about, and that's why I said pay attention to how people talk about things, right? When you hear me talk about situations, you will hear me say, I'm not that great at this, or I've witnessed this, so I know that this isn't good. Or there's a part of me that is a bit biased here because I ain't gonna lie to you. I will tell you that it's not 100% hunky-dory. But she will always tell you, like, I've had a great father and I know what a great man is. I'm like, do you? You know aspects of a great man, but it's affected you so much that you're a runner and a track star. Call it what it is. Although you loved your father because of the fact that he was present at certain aspects, he was also not going to be present at certain aspects. It was scary at certain points because your physical safety was going to be compromised. Let's be honest. Come on now. Come on. You know what I mean? You know? So, but anyway, that's also why she's able to be around men like Shannon Sharpe, Nick Cannon, Cam Newton, because these men are very powerful men. Her father was a powerful man. She knows exactly how to handle powerful men. Right? She knows exactly how to pick powerful men. What she is failing to see is the other side, which is just because you had your daddy wrapped around your finger because he was your father, men who are very powerful that you date, when you wrap them around your finger, you start to feel unsafe because you have control. Come on, sis. Like, you know what I mean? And that's what, and then listen, we all need to process our own individual things, but it's the delusion of saying, you know, like my father every single time was so great. And it's like, but sis, the results are showing us that they weren't. Like, I'm not saying that you have to be married. No. I'm saying the way that you talk about things from your perspective, that tells me that sis, there's some things there. Just saying. You know what I mean? But her work, I will never question it. Her work is actually really, really good. I can't lie to you. When she talks to the man, she's got it on point. Okay, all right. Her work is really on point. I can't lie to you. Whether she's got her real qualifications or not, I'm not even concerned. I mean, that could be a bit of deceiving if she's not really got them, but she knows her stuff because when she talks, I hear the wisdom. Okay. But you know, she's pointing out some really good things, right, about Shannon Sharpe right now. And let me just quickly scoot back. So we just want to scoot back a little bit so we can address this.
And only a woman who wants to be led by a deceiver is a woman who is lost in herself.
Now, this is really important because she makes a really great point. A lot of people are also deceived, right? And so a woman that wants to date a man that, you know, creates physical safety, but makes her also feel unsafe because his lifestyle is one of chaos, okay, is used to chaos. And a lot of times you're deceived by those patterns, hence why you go into those people. Look, you see, that's why there are, and of course, we're not talking about the exceptions to a rule where a girl will like a bad boy but come from a really good home. There are exceptions to the rule. General principle is that because you've seen that pattern of a lifestyle, you're likely to fall into that pattern of a lifestyle. So a man who's into the drug game, a man who's into sleeping with several different women and doing all that, you've witnessed a brokenness and you've witnessed brokenness and you've experienced brokenness. And so therefore the pattern is easy to fall into or accept because that's what you've been around. So for instance, I always say this, that whilst I was on the streets, and I was telling the men this on another panel, I said, whilst I was on the streets doing what I was doing, right, I was encountering the same type of women. They're not healed women because I was not healed. I was broken. They were broken. The reason why they were accepting me and just wanting sex from me and I only want sex from them is because I was only willing to give a piece of me because of my brokenness. They were only willing to give a piece of themselves because of their brokenness. People that were whole and holistic were not messing with me. They weren't. Why would they want to mess with me when I'm going to mess them up? Their whole pattern of life is holistic behaviors. They want to go to places where they're going to have emotional attunement and emotional attachment. They want to go to a place where it's safe emotionally for them. They want to go to a place where they're loved correctly. They don't want to be on the streets. So the people that I'm meeting on the streets, the people that you're meeting on the streets, God forbid you be on the streets, but you meeting people on the streets and doing all that nonsense, right, is brokenness. You know what I'm saying to you? You wanted to die. Look, we call it a bit of a dark art. Those of us who've been on the street, having street smarts actually comes from the fact that you've been on the streets. So there's a brokenness that comes from that because whilst you're on the streets, you've had to witness things that other people have never witnessed. You've got traumas that other people do not have in this lifetime. And so you'll never, no, I can't say never. They will rarely be able to understand your life. Like if you come from the hood, or we call it in England, the ends, right? And you witness someone getting stabbed. You witness someone getting shot. You witness police always coming in and raiding people. You witness the injustice. You witness trials and tribulations in the hood or in the ends. It changes your perception and your mindset. When you're profiled as a black person simply for just existing, it changes the way that you operate in the world. So when you go into the world, we say we have street smarts. We can spot a grifter. We can spot a scammer. We can spot somebody. And so no matter how they change their clothing, we can call it out and be like, bro, that man's a grifter, bro. That politician right there, he's a scammer. We know them because we see the same energy. We've witnessed it. We're aware of it, right? It's the education. So when you haven't existed in that world, when you've only been born into a household where your parents were able to love you, be able to take care of you, appreciate you, really meet your emotional needs. Yeah. When you meet somebody like me at that point in time, bro, when I was coming at you, we're not going to mesh. You're going to look at me like, why is he so distant? Why is he always like, just wanting sex, but not necessarily wanting me? That person's going to be very quickly going, we're not compatible because the way he sees life and the way I see life is very different. Right? Okay, so this is really important. Okay.
But a woman who is not lost in herself and has a sense of self and a sense of what a male healthy leader looks like my father led me.
Right.
Not to a ditch, but led me even when he had to crucify himself to lead me.
Right.
That is what a husband looks to me. A bad guy says, I'm not crucifying nothing over here. You'll be on the cross before me. And here you can carry mines too, because that's what's conducive for me. That's a woman who is lost in the sauce. and she has daddy issues, and oftentimes she may even have parental issues.
Now, if I remember correctly, her father also was doing drugs and her mother was in drugs. So the actual trauma is wild for Dr. Cheyenne. Again, I'm not trying to out her. I'm more talking about the fact that what she's kind of said. What she said to Dr. Shannon Sharpe is correct. I'm just highlighting that you can end up becoming deceived yourself when you're not able to look at yourself and see where you're missing things, right? If I remember correctly, she said her mother was on drugs for a while. Her mother got herself together again, but her mother was on drugs. What kind of trauma would that do to you as a young girl? Her mother got her back. Her mother's got herself back together again, and her mother is clean and good now. But your mother was on drugs, and your dad was a drug lord. Are you telling me that that's not going to create a dichotomy in your mind, some level of trauma, right? In the way that you think, in the way that you move, right? To ask yourself, dad, the question, wait, hold on, mom was on drugs, and dad was the one. Was that you start asking questions like, was dad supplying her the drugs? Like, what's going on? You see what I'm saying to you? Right?
And that's also a woman who has to take a step back and take inventory on, where did I learn that this leadership is accurate leadership if I keep being led into the ditch?
And that's the advice she needs to take on for herself. What kind of leadership did she have that she would be led into a ditch? Because for that particular person to do that, okay, for that person to be involved in a drug game, they have to be deceiving. I'm sorry, there's no truth here. The person has to be deceiving. There's a level of deceit. We can call it manipulation, the art of manipulation. There has to be a level of that, because the job that they're doing requires you to be in deceit on a daily basis. So you're going to learn manipulative tactics over a while because you're going to observe.
That means that all she's ever known is what? The ditch. And what did I say? We go to places where we're good at or where what we're familiar with. So if you want to know where you at, just understand that you are where you're familiar at. So my expectations of men are very high because my father created a very high familiar standard expectation. This is why I said a woman is what her daddy makes her, especially when it comes to men. My dad actually made the expectation too high.
And this is where I said delusion is on the highest level and plane. Your dad made the standard too high? No, he did not. No, he did not. No, he did not. No, he did not. Dr. Bryant is a beautiful woman. I mean, she's beautiful. Okay? She's encountered many men. Men have been proposing to her regularly, bro. Her issue isn't that she can't get a man. Her issue is that when she gets that man, eventually, like she told us, she's disrespected that man before. She has told that man he has to be more stronger. She has, denied proposals, quit them at the end. So what is the reason? And this is what I'm saying to you. When I'm hearing someone tell you something, okay, when I'm hearing someone tell you something, they should also include themselves. Why like my standards are so high? Is it, sis? Is it? Because I'll tell you the honest truth. I can come in and tell you the same thing. My standards are so high. I had two parents. I had two parents that, that loved me and cared about me. This is why I see that other people, they got so many damages in their life. I can see how people, they don't get along in relationships. I can see how they never were successful in marriages. To sit here and say that would be delusional. It would be absolutely delusional because that has not been my life. I have two parents in my household. I have two parents who are married. And if I don't tell you the full story of how it actually affected me, then I can sit here and tell you delusional. I can tell you delusions, but the reality is that's not the truth. The truth is there are things that happen that I've witnessed and seen that have affected me in a relationship, and I've actually had to go and do the work. I've actually had to go away and undo what I experienced and saw because I was incorrectly applying what I saw, even sometimes, a lot of times, subconsciously. You know what I mean? So now when I'm talking, I'm saying to you, hey, I've done some things. I've done this. I've done that. I've said this. I've said that. There's a lot of things I'll tell you, because what I don't want to sound like is on a pedestal. oh, the reason why I know this is because I've had to go through the hardship of it. I've been hit, I've been broken by it. This person did me dirty. This person said this. I did this wrong. I tell you that because I tell you that because I want you to understand I'm not on a pedestal, but because also where does that learning come from?
You gotta tell me, like, baby, you're gonna keep being the bridesmaid, not the bride, if you keep having these unrealistic expectations. And I'm looking like, well,
you the one that
came
set
from
those
you.
expectations
And he had to
unrealistically.
explain to me, every man's not gonna be daddy. He can be daddy to you in his own way.
Right.
It may not look like this.
Yes.
It does.
The reality is that because if Dr. Sharon Brown is really honest, she has her own issues around what her father was actually doing, right? And her own issues as how that relationship has. I'm not denying that she loves her father and that her father loves her. I'm not denying that her father did his absolute most and best to cover her and protect her. What we are talking about is what she witnessed. Okay? What we are talking about is what she saw. She saw a tradesman in the underhanded world for a very long time. What you experienced was emotional and physical lack of safety in the presence of what you went through. Okay, and in that space, right, what that created was a fear of attaching to somebody because your life then could be dictated by them. This is a very scary place to be. So I'm totally understanding. Okay, I'm totally understanding. That's a lot of trauma for someone to deal with. You know what I'm saying to you? But like I said, going back to what she said about Shannon Sharpe, that's why sex is transactional over emotional attachments. And so for a lot of people, sex is easier because you don't have to deal with the heart of the person. You don't have to deal with the totality of the person. The person can hide themselves behind a mask of sex. But listen, I haven't watched the rest of the interview. I will try to watch it and probably give it another breakdown a little bit later on as well. But please like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notifications of the uploads. We'll be back with another one. I've got a very lovely stream I want to start doing on Jay Barnett and Crystal Renee. They did a great conversation. I want to break that down for you guys as well. Much love, much appreciation. We'll see you again soon.